GM everyone, and welcome back to a weekly episode of We in Web3, a podcast about you, me, them, basically people who are building the future of Web3 and reshaping the way we interact in the digital ecosystem, from early adopters to newcoming celebrities and advocates. I'm your host, Nikita Tsikaluk, and as always, we're building the space by people for people. Today, my guest is Renz Chong, who is a co-founder and CEO of BreederDAO, an NFT asset factory that reshapes the blockchain gaming industry based in the Philippines. Renz, I'm really happy to see you on my podcast. Hi, my man.
Likewise, Nikita, it's been a while. Happy to just chat with you and to, talk to everyone that's watching the show. I really believe in your mission, and it clearly resonates with me and the entire ethos of Web3 when you say for the people and by the people. So that's also one of our goals that we have here.
Amazing, my man. That's also the reason why I invited you as a gaming in Web3 industry expert. For those who don't know, I met Renz back this summer in July during ECC. We had a chance to share the stage together with you, together with Sebastian Bourget from Sandbox to talk about the gaming industry back then, which elements can make it, and what the future holds. And today's episode, I would like also to focus on this topic, perhaps dive deeper a bit more from Asian standpoint, because majority of recent Web3 games are coming from the Philippines, from Singapore, Korea, and also hear your opinion about games and elements of Web3 gaming that's gonna make it in the future. So let's get started, my man.
Do it.
Yeah, since we're calling from basically two different parts of the world, I'm based in Europe. Renz is based right now in the Philippines. There might be a small delay, but I hope that it's not gonna affect the quality of our discussion here today, my man. Let's start with a simple question. You are really deep into the gaming industry. What is your story before you entered the Web3 space? Were you a die-hard gaming fan? Were you a part of some gaming guilds? Or how did you end up in the gaming industry?
Sure. So I think I've been a fan of gaming ever since. First few games that I really played hard was Gunbound. Sort of familiar with Softlink's Gunbound. Uh, Also touched on like Counter Strike, a lot of these FPS games, Crossfire, Special Force, and then also eventually moved into MOBA games like League of Legends, and then now like Mobile Legends, right? So I've been playing for a long time, and I can say that uh, I'm the type of gamer who wants to go through like all the quests together, try and find like all the treasures within a map, and really just experience the game as a whole and leave every box open. Right? So that's me. Um, but maybe outside of gaming, because at one point my mom was also like, "No, you're never gonna earn anything from gaming and all of that stuff." I think previously games were just a source of entertainment, right? And esports wasn't a thing. Watching being able to earn from these games by winning in competitions weren't really a thing. So she never really wanted me to kind of play these games because she feels like these are distractions, right? From becoming like successful businessman or you know climbing the corporate ladder of some sort. So it's a different world that we're in really, and so I really started off my career as a consultant. Kind of gives me like the freedom to simultaneously play games, but at the same time explore like the different opportunities out there. With consulting, you get to touch on like different facets of different industries as well as different countries. And so it really provides like that holistic experience and learning about pretty much anything. Right. then I realized that I wanted more. Consulting is more back end work, more recommendations, more strategies, or at least the one that I went to, right? So I decided to move into a more execution based environment, named startups, right? One that's most prominent one would be Arcas, which is basically back riding motorcycle service that aims to transport people, similar to how Grab or Uber does it, but instead of like four-wheeled vehicles, focuses on two-wheeled motorcycle vehicles. And then eventually found myself into crypto, realized that, you know, the happy medium, or the mix between like gaming and blockchain is something that's unparalleled, and I haven't heard of from before. Because aside from like the games I've mentioned earlier, I'm also a fan of like gacha games, where I just want to collect all of these characters, right? So every time there's a limited event, I would surely buy these diamonds, these gems, these tokens, just to be able to make sure that I get the spot for, or I get like all of these characters in the game. But after some time, you know how it goes with a lot of these games, they eventually lose its shine, or its time, right? And then you just have to move on to the next game, leaving your assets there, maybe for bragging rights in the future, if it still makes sense, but generally or basically nothing, right? So when I heard about Axie Infinity and the ability to own your assets, I was like, I think no doubt this is something for me, and I definitely wanted to be part of this space.
You have a very powerful background story because you basically proved your family that they were wrong. A successful businessman can still play games, and that's basically what you're doing.
Right,
Creating
right.
games, innovating games, playing games on a daily basis. So, if I may say so, you definitely made it in the way you wanted it to be. So, do you still find some time to play games right now, or the Web3 space, the business management role takes all your time?
I still do. In fact, when I first started BreederDAO, I didn't really start off as like, okay, I'm just gonna make like all the assets, right? I believe in starting from the ground up. And what that means would be me just starting to dive deep into the game and really studying it, right? Because the only way for you to be able to manage like a company, or effectively manage a company, would be via knowing like how it started or where it started, right? So started really off like playing Axie Infinity. In my spare time, I still play games. I try and test a bunch of like these newer games. Crypto Unicorns Farming, for example, is one that I still play. And then on a more traditional side, I still play like Mobile Legends. I tried Valorant as well. So I still make sure that I spend time, because I also want to understand like the difference between the more traditional games, right? Or at least like the non-Web3 games right now, versus the Web3 games. Because there's been a dichotomy where people are saying that, Web3 games are not going to be sustainable, and that, it adds no value to like existing games, because the quality of these games are like, far, far and beyond, and way better than current ones. So yeah, for me, it's still important that you're still on the ground and you still know like what you're really fighting for. So for me, that would be like playing games and providing that asset ownership to people, and realizing why um, blockchain really has something to offer, with the current Web3, or with the current traditional games that we have.
That is actually the question that I also have for you. How are you testing out the water in traditional gaming industry to understand what will be relevant for Web3 space? Because the party we went to back in Paris, I remember chatting with all of your team, with Jet, with
Mhm.
Julia, with like directors of marketing, PR from all possible departments, chatting with them about their favorite games, how the traditional gaming is influencing Web3 gaming industry, and the games that everyone named back then was Counter-Strike. We were discussing all
Mhm.
different versions, 1.C, Source, Go, who reached which level. So it was a very interesting discussion with your team, like guys of age of 23, 25, 28, sitting there and discussing Counter-Strike game.
Yeah.
They really enjoyed it. So let me know what are some of the recent games that you got inspired from in traditional gaming industry. What are some of the games that you enjoyed the most in the last couple of years?
I think the one that I really enjoy right now the most would be Mobile Legends still.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been playing it since 2017, I believe. And the appeal to me is still there because of the constant updates, right? All of these partnerships with larger brands, um, trying to add cosmetics into the game and then different set of gameplays. So I believe that eventually Web3 gaming will have its own like similar glow or like I guess appeal in that there's always something new and the game itself is interesting enough that people will be able to play it, right? Esports, for example, is also becoming a thing. Axie recently had its own like competition during AxieCon, which had like huge prize pool, right? Which is unheard of, right, for Web3 gaming. But we're slowly like incorporating elements of Web2 that has made it successful and baking those back into Web3. Because admittedly, right, there are already things in Web2 gaming that have already worked. And for me, it's not that Web3 is copying Web2. It's more of like, improving these by adding new elements and integrating or incorporating whatever elements that have worked as well in the past, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if blockchains, for example, added value would be ownership of assets and then being able to, build on top of each other, then the other things like cosmetics in game or, you know, um, making or incorporating other IPs into your own game. These are things that we can still make use of. And the concept behind it didn't necessarily just start from like games, right? It's been a practice for a lot of businesses, right? And having these elements and then trying and testing out which one would stick, which one would work, is also like a very important thing, especially when it comes to innovation and development of business.
I mean, the fact that the gaming industry itself is moving so fast, like the quality of picture, like Unreal Engine 4, Unreal Engine 5, the
Mhm.
quality of storytelling. Before we had some games where you had the story, like gameplay itself, for a couple of hours. If you take The Last of Us 2, for example, or some of recent storytelling games, it's for tens of
Mhm.
hours and you're enjoying it on different consoles. So what I'm trying to say here is that the degree of expectations from general consumers, general users, gamers is
Right.
extremely high. And for you to innovate in Web3, you need to build on this layer, even above. So the expectation here is
Yep.
much, much higher. That's perhaps why not that many people nowadays are talking about Web3 gaming because we're still early. Because those games,
Right.
as you mentioned, that represent Web3 right now, apart from a couple of exceptions, in general, those games are poorly designed. Those games are made just for sake of just existing, sake of making some quick money as one of utilities. Hey, we launch an NFT project, and by the way, we're gonna have a game. And the fact that this game is in
Right.
2D, the fact that this game is available only on one console, it makes the whole experience worse. But we're coming there. I'm extremely sorry that I didn't come to Axie Infinity. I was invited by Bailey, I was invited by Leah, and I know that it was hell of an event. I know that you enjoyed
Yep.
your stay in Singapore right now. You just came from there. So let me know how was your experience in Singapore itself? How did you like it?
Singapore was really great. Like I think pretty much everyone was there. By everyone, I mean like well, not literally like everyone, right? But like everyone who you'd want to wish for. Like, if you're interested in gaming, there were side events specifically for gaming. If you're interested in meeting up investors, there were a ton of investors there from all over like the world, right? And basically, you get to mingle and you get to chat with existing friends, current friends, but also meet like interestingly new ones, right? The event itself was also packed. When I went in, it's probably one of the most packed ones that I've ever been to. And that's saying a lot because I've been to a lot recently. I think it's at par with consensus in terms of the number of audience, uh, globalness of Singapore as a hub, right, is really showing. But more than that, I think it's also a relatively um, easier point of or like a ground zero for a lot of us because most of the crypto people understand English, right? And at least like we have that common language. A lot of like these other events are, I wouldn't say like more local, but um, the audience aren't as global. And so oftentimes, you encounter like events where it's 90% or the language is 90% local and then 10% like English. So if you're actually from the outside, it's hard to mingle and it's hard to, you know, join these conversations because it feels as though like it's more exclusive. Don't get me wrong though, these are also like nice in the sense that, you're also cultivating that kind of environment within these localized industries or these localized markets. Because at the end of the day, right, it's also the reason why, for example, there's a separate layer one for Korea. There's a separate layer one for Japan or Japan gaming, right? Because the needs of each market are different, and the only way to actually tailor fit like each one would be to create like a separate one for them. But not to say that there's no like solution or there's no standard that can be done for each, right? But at least like as a starting point, right? We can create our own individual ones and then merge them into one big thing or something like that. It's the same as why are we now seeing solutions that are not really purely Web3 but more Web 2.5, right? Because we realized that in order for us to go from Web 2 to Web 3, we need to be able to bridge the users first. And it's not an immediate change in mindset or understanding that would allow them to automatically shift or be part of this huge movement, right? It's more of taking it one step at a time, giving them the crumbs so that they would slowly understand and then eventually like take the shift. So yeah, for me, like Singapore was an eye opener in terms of bringing everyone together, more on the Asia side because for the longest part, it's always been in Europe and US, right? And now that Singapore has become like a crypto hub as well, then it's nice for a change for us to travel less, and then for the people, in the western part to travel more.
I mean, that's really interesting. You said that you have more exposure in the US market and European market, and it was an eye opener for you, even though you're that close to Singapore itself. I just came from London, where I was presenting at Zibu Life conference, and I also invited you. I know that you didn't come because of visa issues. I hope that you come
Yep.
next year. But it was also an eye opener for me, the fact that people who are living there, they're not that well connected with the whole British ecosystem. They have more exposure somewhere outside. The same happened when I
Oh,
was back in France, for example. A lot of these people, even though it's less than in the UK, but still a lot of people had exposure somewhere abroad, not in the local area. So that's really interesting that you're saying that basically you coming from the Philippines, you have more exposure somewhere abroad. I know that Asia did an amazing work last year. Was the Singapore week the biggest event, the biggest gaming event you attended this year, or still it wasn't the best one?
Uh, Gaming, I think it's still the one in San Francisco, right? At least general gaming is. GDC is still, I think, by far like the standard for a lot of these like gaming events, and it combines like not only Web3 but also has like more traditional ones. Gamescom, I think in LA, is also one of the biggest ones. But yeah, I think we haven't really had like a large enough like Web3 gaming event um, here in Asia. We're actually hoping to have the first one here in the Philippines. It's gonna be in November. So that's gonna be Web3 Festival, right? I think
Love it.
you know Philippines is still the epicenter of like Web3 gaming. A lot of games, builds, and even infrastructure plays originated from here, just because a lot of the players, for example, for Axie Infinity, are also based here. So we kind of see like how the landscape shaping up and where it's heading. So yeah,
Love it. So moving back to Web3 gaming industry, I know that you actually started almost 2 years ago with Eden Ventures. Eden Ventures also organized a private gathering back in Paris. We both were invited there. I know that you are well connected with the team, and you are still holding the role of consultant there. As far as I know, some of Eden Venture members were also your first mentors in this space. So let us know what is your connection with Eden Ventures, that is basically the biggest gaming VC right now in the Philippines.
sure. So Eden Ventures is not just a VC; it's also an incubator, right? So when we first started BreederDAO, Eden Ventures was the one who incubated it as well. So we started off not naming it as BreederDAO, but more of like trying to see if there's a space for us or an asset generator company or asset generation generator project to exist in the space, right? And so we started there as like experimenting whether or not we can supply assets to the guilds, the marketplace, the friends and families, right? What's interesting is that in the span of 3 months, we were able to grow our fund size from 180K to 1.5 M, which is why like when we
This is massive.
finally realized that this is something could be huge, right? And that was without like any technology. That was pure manual, just leveraging off like our expertise as consultants, trying to see like what algorithm works, which assets to produce, right? So and eventually assets will be the building blocks of any blockchain game or for any metaverse in the future because assets will drive like whatever is created or what can be created there. So yeah, we then thought that we might as well spin it off to do a project on its own, which is when BreederDAO came to life. So yeah, right now I'm still very close to the team. I wouldn't say I'm still an active consultant. It's really more of like since we're closely related or we're still very good friends with most of the people there. Uh, we sometimes do sharing of deal floats. And then any incubate company that they have, we kind of help at least with partnerships with whatever it is that we've learned in the past, be that maybe just launching a token, how to get started, what are the things that needs to be done on the legal, financial, um, and even organization structure um, point of view, right? So yeah, that's basically like how we work together right now. But yes, they are an incubator and a VC.
I mean, the fact that you no longer are that connected with Eden Ventures, but still you're in good relationships. It's something that I adore a lot about the Philippines, because coming from you, I understood that even though the ecosystem is small, that is also a huge benefit there because everyone knows everyone, everyone is supporting
Yep.
everyone. Just going through your Twitter, there is a lot of appreciation tweets to one company with the founder of whom you studied back at university, another company who supported you like a year ago or something like this. So this is something that I do believe we here in Europe should learn from you a lot. So huge props to you about it. Talking about BreederDAO, I consider BreederDAO as one of the biggest Web3 gaming factories out there, meaning that you're responsible not only for in-game assets creation, but you're also consulting teams, projects on how to start. You're also helping them to build this roadmap, build those games, build this vision. So let us know what are some of what is your most interesting case when working with BreederDAO? Most interesting case in case of the project that you led, the project that you consulted, and perhaps what is the most, I don't know, unusual case for you, maybe even the worst case for you, also for people to understand what stations happen there in your company.
Right. So I think I wouldn't mention like specific projects because we're also under NDA, right? But just to give like example on a few of the things that we were able to touch, there's actually a few Web2 gaming studios that have approached us and have asked for our help in terms of the blockchain side of things, right? Because they know that blockchain is coming to gaming, whether they like it or not, and it might not be them, but there's gonna be like developers who are slowly moving and slowly building. So when they want to kind of experiment, say start with like a singular game, right? Oftentimes the question would be like, so how do I actually start? Which components should be based on blockchain? Which components should be off chain, right? And we try and go through like the exact game mechanics to try and see like what should be what should be on chain and what shouldn't be, like, and then try and see like what the tokenomics part should look like on the game itself, or if it even needs like a tokenomics part, right? Because a lot of the flaws right now would be forcing like a lot of these things just because like the current, I guess, standard is still Axie Infinity, right? And if this is how Axie Infinity started, then maybe we can just replicate the two token model that they have, right? And then, but we've seen like a lot of changes specifically to Axie Infinity as well, moving some assets to off chain, for example, or introducing new ways to burn assets that are not necessarily like NFTs. So we're now seeing a lot of these changes, and we're trying to go back to the beginning and seeing really like how it really started, right? What is blockchain's application to gaming? At the core of like blockchain, what is the value that it really provides? And then how then can you actually use that? If it's about like asset ownership and you have like a gotcha game, for example, do you think that it makes sense for a lot of these assets to be combined to be transformed into a new asset? Um, is that the way for you to be able to retain more players, but at the same time generating revenue for your company or for your game, right? So there's a lot of these things that we play at the back of our heads. But also since we have like PlayCore, which is a data analytics and content aggregator platform, we also see like how these other games are doing and what sorts of like things they've experimented on. If for example there's a new innovation where people introduce like a tree token model, how did it fare? Did was it, I want to say like a bubble, right? Was it like effective? Or was it only like short-lived, right? So the things that we see, is it an execution problem? And if so, like what can we do to actually improve it, right? Um, is the idea inherently good, but the implementation was poor? If so, can we try and rewrap it, right, under a different like manner and then push it forward? So I guess information itself is very important because, as I mentioned, we're still just very early and we're still starting, right? And if you look at the early days of free to play, it didn't really start off as similar to the quality of games of play to win or pay to play, right? So, you know, in fact, I'm getting the same vibes as when free to play started, that people were bashing it and saying that this has no future, and rightly so, because people are saying that it's free, right? And we haven't really ironed out like monetization models or a way for it to become sustainable. In the same manner as how like Roblox and Minecraft, they existed in 2009, 2011, but only recently gained popularity, right? Because it took time before they were able to target a specific audience that would um, attract, or that would be attracted to their platform. So there's a lot of these things going in the back end, and we're just generally happy to help people and to help like these builders see what has been done, how it works, and then eventually like brainstorm with them on how to push it forward.
And it's perfectly understandable that there is a lot of elements that are still not um that visible, that clear for people, because the space is still early. Just like you mentioned right now, you're asking hundreds of questions and you're coming with hundreds of different options how you can build this or that game, whether the economics should be the main element, how to play around with in-game assets, and that is perfectly fine. We're still early. We're gonna get there. I do believe that the end result here is in 15, 20 years from now, for every general user to be able to control the game, to be able to modify, co-create
Yeah,
the game from the comfort of your phone, your laptop, so that you
right,
don't need to connect with developers, connect with producing game, and actually address all these issues, and you could just do it by yourself.
for sure.
Uh, yeah,
Yep,
you.
that's right. Because a lot of people are also like thinking about the fact that if these games are going to be owned by the people, which part of like the game plan or which part of the game should be offloaded to them into decision
Mhm.
making, right? Should, for example, buffs or nerfs for specific characters or for all characters within the game be at the hands of like people, and then we come up with like a platform where anyone can actually propose like a buffing of a specific item or a specific character, and if ever that passes, it automatically gets implemented, right? So there are these kinds of things where we also try to look into, because again, like if we're to hand like the ownership to the people, then they want to be part of like the direction setting of a bunch of these games as well.
You mentioned the name Axie Infinity a couple of times in your previous reply. So I'm just trying to understand what is the current sentiment around Axie Infinity in the Philippines, in Singapore, basically in the whole Asian region. Is it still the golden standard that everyone is looking after? Or with the recent downturn of the market, with the recent problems with uh, the token supply, the economics of the game, Axie Infinity is no longer top one priority.
Um, I think if you look at wallets and engagements of Axie Infinity, it's still up there, right? I'm not saying it's the only one up there, but when we look at the data itself, the monthly active wallets of Axie Infinity, at least on average, is still 7x than the next largest Web3 game, right? So I think by Web3 standards, it still is like the golden standard. And you can see that Axie Infinity itself is trying to make like a lot of changes. For example, before the idea that was being pushed forward by a lot of these games in general was play to earn, right? And now people are shifting towards play and earn. And then if before the focus was, onboarding as much people as possible, now it's more on onboarding the best possible people, at least on the guild side, right? Because the game has changed and it's not just about like being able to grind as much. Now it's being able to win as much. So leaderboards has become like a crucial part. Um, People have moved towards, getting on top of like the ladder instead of getting the number or reaching a quota every single game. So I think right now Axie is still like setting the stage for a lot of the new innovations in the space. But not to say that they're the only ones, right? It's just that they're the only ones that have, I guess, made a name for themselves like at a huge scale and has a large enough audience that has already launched. But in the future, and as you said, right, this is a long game for us. It's going to be like a 15, 20-year down the line thing. And pretty sure and I'm pretty hopeful that a lot of the games, the ones that are not yet live right now, are gonna surprise the world and gonna improve the quality of the games and gonna attract like a different set of audience. So for me, like Axie Infinity is able to target like a specific genre or profile of individuals, you know, card battler, right? And then eventually, once we have other types of games, then it would slowly attract like more and more people that um, will want like different sets or different kinds of game types.
I mean, definitely, Axie Infinity has been one of the first Web3 native games out there, and Axie bringing so many different elements like leaderboard, like breeding, the in-game token. Uh, it just makes it almost impossible for people to forget about the existence of the game because all the elements are there,
Yep.
and in one way or another, you're gonna repeat what has been already done there just because majority of all these factors are already in this game. uh,
Right.
Undeniably competition starting from the Axie Infinity leader board has been a huge part of Web3 gaming. Do you believe that competition is the driver of the next 10 years for the gaming industry? Do we need to have this play to earn element in the game to bring more attention to people, bring more awareness that you can actually play and earn some money? Or you believe that we need to move into the element of enjoyment, the element of in gaming aesthetics, perhaps? What is your take here?
Yep. So I think this is not an innovation that Axie Infinity really started, right? So you mentioned Counter Strike earlier. I mentioned a bunch of like these MOBA games, and a lot of people still enjoy like esports in general for these traditional games. And I think like everything that you've mentioned is important, like aesthetics within games, entertainment value, right? But esports addresses not just like gaming itself, but also viewership, right? So a lot of people play the game, not necessarily in the hopes to win or compete eventually, but just so that they can enhance their experience within the game by winning more matches, right? And this is usually done by watching other people play and then trying to see what they did so well or what they did so that you can replicate it and win a match yourself, right? Or maybe try and get like the best elements out there and then incorporate into your own playing style. So there are people who are happy with just watching. It's a different like audience altogether. But yeah, I feel like it's also gonna be big, but it's not the only thing for sure that's gonna drive like gaming in general. And in the future, um, a lot of people think that it's not gonna be a distinction of Web 2 or Web 3 gaming. It's just gonna be gaming in general. And sometimes, asset ownership may be important. Sometimes ownership may not be important to people, but at least there are games that would follow like this or would follow that. In the same manner as like pay to play didn't necessarily just die, right? With the creation of free to play. So Elden Rings became really popular just recently, even though it's a pay to play game. Um, and I feel like it's gonna be the same, right? So free to play is not necessarily gonna die just because like we have things like free to own, or we have things like play and earn, because it may still appeal to a different set of audience, just not the ones that we're thinking. But there are like over 3 billion players, and each one may have their own idea of what a cool game is, and we just gotta respect that and you know know who we want to target eventually, especially for the builders and the developers out there.
You just mentioned a couple of different derivatives of playing to earn or playing to get something. Let's approach this topic from a different angle, reverse angle, doing something to earn, which is also a kind of derivative coming from play to earn. For
Mm-hmm.
example, move to earn, or as some people say, soon we're gonna have a breeze to earn gaming element. How big of a fan are you of all these different activities to be earned on the blockchain, which kind of started as a gaming element? You need to do something, you need to be active, kind of it brings some
Mm-hmm.
value to people by being active, by interacting with other, messaging, walking, running, etc. But at the same time, with all these unsustainable tokenomics, all unsustainable models that we can see right now on the market, you buying this NFT for a couple of $100s, earning uh, perhaps even the whole sum, but then buying some additional boosters, buying some additional assets, and at the end of the day, almost all of these projects are going to zero. How big of a fan are you of this do something to earn movement?
Right. So personally, I think like these are not like game types, right? These are more of like campaigns to that caters to like a specific audience, and this audience would mostly be ones that are motivated by income, right? So if you look at more traditional games like Genshin Impact, if I'm a player and I decide to make 100 accounts, because when you start playing the game, right, you get that initial fee drop, and then you get to reroll I think 3 times, right? And then those 3 times would earn you like 3 random heroes, and then there's a chance for you to get like a 5-star hero, which is what everyone is gunning for, but not everyone has the time to like just reroll and create like numerous accounts. Right? So there are a few people who would start like selling off these accounts, and you can call it like grind to earn or something, right? But these are like concepts that already exist, and there are particular players who are really motivated by this. Blockchain basically just kind of legalized it, right? And for me, there's nothing wrong with that, right? You still want to be able to allow people to just basically do whatever they want with the game, whether that's earning through it or just simply playing it. But the idea is that you build a game not for a specific group of people in mind, or like not specifically for earning, because we all know that's not sustainable. If everyone's goal is just to earn within a game, then how is that even a game to begin with, right?
Exactly.
So um, yeah, for me, I think it's inevitable that there will still people who would try to game the game by earning from it. And I guess like that's not really something that's bad, right? Because it still happens, and you just want to build a game and then attract all sorts of people, and then hope that the way to actually earn is not the only thing that would keep people going.
Whenever I'm asked what is the biggest difference between traditional Web2 companies and Web3 projects, I'm saying that in traditional way, we had this earning element. The brands are building to make money. That is their main driver. In the Web3 space, you have this additional element, which is called community. Basically building by people, for people. And that's actually what you just mentioned for Web3 games to be not that much driven by money, which will be also a factor there. You cannot eliminate it. Still, gaming agencies, companies need to make some money. But the fact of having fun, the fact of enjoying the gaming experience itself, is something that need to be there. And I remember that we had a very detailed talk with you and Sebastian back in Paris about what does this fan means for people. For some people, it might be trading within the game. For some people, it might be this sense of
Yep.
connectedness, sense of co-creation. For others, it might be anything
Right.
else. So I absolutely appreciate you addressing this issue here. Another issue that we're having currently in the Web3 space is lack of ownership. You already mentioned earlier today is the term interoperability or lack of interoperability right now in the Web3 space.
Yep.
Basically, people having their assets in games, in traditional games like Fortnite or Counter-Strike or some Web3 native games, does not guarantee them the ownership of it in its full essence. The ownership when you enter this game, yes. The ownership apart from this game, taking your assets to another game, modifying it, selling it, etc., it's not something that is there yet. So I would like
Yep.
you to rate interoperability from 1 to 10 by this time, October 2022, where 10 is the highest possible level, where all assets can be easily transferable and owned by people. And also let us know what are some of the things that we need to see in the upcoming years to get this highest level of interoperability.
Sure. I think right now we're still at two. Um, Only because like there's not much infrastructure that's placed out there, and not a lot of people are still building on each other's IP, right? Um, you can imagine in the future where there are like strong IPs, like what you mentioned, Fortnite, for example, or Valorant or Counter-Strike, where people would want to be able to tap into the users of these existing like IPs to be able to um, target or to be able to like have their initial set of users, right? So there are games right now which have done this one by leveraging of PFPs, turning your PFPs, for example, into actual characters within the game, and then you can battle against each other, right? But I feel like because of the lack of like strong IPs that people can build on top of, then interoperability doesn't really make sense yet. Plus, I guess it's important to note as well that not a lot of people still understand like the value of interoperability. Just because even if I can use it, on another game, but that other game is not, as interesting for me, then what's the point, right? But again, this is something that we don't expect to happen overnight, right? And you can see the potential, for example, of assets um, being rebuilt, or at least like a different environment being rebuilt on existing assets. Like imagine games that you've played previously that have now become obsolete are gonna get revived by other developers using the same assets, and they manage to create like another interesting game, right? So these are the things that we expect to see like in the future. And then once we've built like the proper infrastructure, or maybe have that standard for a lot of these games, or maybe even like get like cross chain or multi chain functionality out there, right? Because again, like that's another factor, right? If we can't even bring an asset from one chain to another, then how can we enable like being or interoperability across like different chains? So yeah, there's a lot of things that we still need to do, and we're not even sure if interoperability really is the way, right, for us to become successful, at least operating on Web3 gaming. But it is an interesting proposition, and eventually something that I hope to see as well. And I'm pretty sure like people would experiment on.
There is definitely still a lot of work to be done, and I appreciate your honesty, marking interoperability right now at two. I would say it's something around two and three. So we're on the same page here. Uh, how much of a role do gaming guilds have right now in sense of reshaping the Web3 gaming industry, onboarding more people, educating people about the blockchain, please?
So I guess when they first started, right, they really started off as like quite similar to like a bank that buys these assets and then loans them out to scholars, right? And in a sense, you can think of it as like they were the gatekeepers, right, to anything Web3 gaming, because most of the ones who would actually play do not really have that initial capital to be able to fund themselves or purchase these assets themselves. But I feel like these guilds are more community based right now. Um, Whether that's via content creation, whether that's via competitive gaming, right? Eventually, they're gonna be at the forefront of this movement. If you look at like content creators, while they may not necessarily help in the actual onboarding of these users, they teach them how to play, how to purchase their own assets, right? In the same manner as like esports player do not necessarily actively engage in you know pulling people in. The fact that they're playing and people aspire to be them, right? Then more or less, right, they kind of enable these people to participate within the economy as well.
What do you personally expect from Web3 gaming industry in the next, let's say, 5 years from now? Today we discussed a lot of topics, starting with the ownership of your asset, building the community around the space, moving from just earning element to actually having some fun, some experience. So, what are the biggest innovations that you're expecting from the whole industry, let's say by 2027?
I think one of the things that I'm really looking forward to is that people will be able to modify, or there will be infrastructures that can support around the modification of assets, right? Because we talk about how like people currently own their asset, but aside from being able to verify on chain, right, that they own these assets, they can't really do anything about it. But imagine if you get to, recreate your asset in your own liking, based on your own like personal, I guess, style, right? Then that is something that, and then in that point you can already say that you really own this asset, right? And then I guess like down the line you can even treat it as your own personal identity, just like how PFPs can now be your you know digital ownership with Twitter pages, right? When the metaverse and then we spend more time in the metaverse, and we meet our friends, meet our family, and then we can bring our characters, to whatever game that it is that we want. That's something that I also want to see. Maybe not in within 5 years, but maybe like more like a 20-year time frame. But 5 years, I expect to see like a lot more AAA quality games. A lot of the game studios that we're talking to right now are estimating maybe 3-4 years of
Mm-hmm.
building. So and a lot of like people from more successful game studios have already shifted, and we expect them to deliver the same quality of games as we are experiencing, right now, on the non-Web3 side of things. So yeah, for sure, like improvement in terms of the quality of games. And I guess in terms of like really solidifying what blockchain can offer to people, right? That may be um, having a share in the creation of that asset, or just being able to play the same asset in a different environment altogether. These are the things that I think will occur or happen in the next few years.
Wow, that seems like a lot of changes are awaiting us in the next 5, 10 years from now. What are some of those
Yep.
games that you're actually uh, the most intrigued about? I can start with myself. There are two games that I'm really interested in seeing soon. One of them is AAA. It's Traverse by wonderful Loopify, something that I'm awaiting, and I do believe in the next couple of years we're gonna get it. And there is another one which I expect to be launched already early next year called Monkey League. I know that you are also well connected with their team. I
Yep.
met Shahaf, one of co-founders,
Oh,
back at Paris Blockchain Week Summit earlier this year. Had lovely conversations there, and since then I've been closely following. They're launching their breeding element later this month. They're launching the alpha version of the game later this year. So those are two games that I'm personally interested in
yep.
seeing progressing further on. What are your games that you're
Right.
is most interested in?
Well, Monkey League just recently had like a partnership with AC Milan, right? So yeah, that should be like pretty hype. Um, I think if you look at the stack of games that we're partnered with, for sure those are the games that we're pretty much like bullish on. But me personally, I'm looking forward for I guess Guild of Guardians and Delicio.
Okay. What is next for the breeder DAO? Because seems like we have discussed today everything. The future of Web3 gaming, the games that are entering the space, the games that are less relevant, becoming less relevant. What's the future for breeder DAO holds? I know that you have some big announcements coming soon. So what are those?
Right. So I think we're still gonna be true to the idea of becoming like the factory of the metaverse, right? Um, just last week we launched like a Digidaikaku rental NFT marketplace, which allows people to, combine their assets and then create new stuff, right? In a sense, you can think of it as like a decentralized factory, right? Where we create like a platform and then people can use whatever machines that we have built in place to be able to craft their own assets. Um, and we'll continue to kind of put forth like these kinds of products in the market. Aside from that, though, we're also pushing out an ecosystem of projects that aims to eventually allow more people to be onboarded into the space. I think you're very familiar with Playcore, which is essentially a gamer's companion. Um, how a lot of these like games or a lot of these like more traditional games have their own like walkthrough videos or walkthrough guides, or maybe like stats to see if I buy this item, what would be like the ending stat for my character. And these are the things that we're surely going to be continually providing to the users to enhance and enrich their experiences. Like another project that we're soon launching would be PlayCash, and it essentially allows people to purchase any asset like in the marketplace via their own local currency, right? So
Wow.
we feel like this would be huge, especially it removes the barrier between people who are not blockchain savvy, right? Or like tech savvy in the first place. They wouldn't have to go through, the process like bridging or like moving funds from one wallet to another. So yeah, yeah. But in general, going back to BreederDAO itself, the things that we're really pushing forward eventually would be the ability for people to co-create or like help in the creation of their assets. If something doesn't exist, then they should be able to build it themselves. If it starts with an idea, then they could put it to life, or at least life inside the metaverse via the platforms and the products that we create.
having the feeling of co-creator. That's where the end game of gaming Web3 space will be, because once Wix introduced their technology of you building a web page in a matter of minutes, that's I believe personally that is the peak of Web 2 space. That's where everyone
Mhm.
could build whatever they wanted. So it seems like a lot of huge news are coming to BreederDAO very soon. A lot of news, a lot of trends are coming to the whole Web3 gaming industry that we as enthusiasts, we as gamers should be really intrigued about. With that being said, I do believe me and my audience would have a huge pleasure to have you on the show later in 2023 when all or maybe some of these projects that you just mentioned will be already released, to actually see how it helps people to efficiently operate in the space, be onboarded there. So it would be really good from standpoint of this analysis to come back to these projects, let's say in a half in a year, and discuss how we were approaching the space back then and what is the current state. With that being said, I would like to ask you, what would be this one question you would love to ask yourself, let's say in a half a year from now, when you are back at We in Web3 podcast, to check out what is the progress of BreederDAO, or whether you moved in the right direction. What would be this one question that you would ask yourself?
Uh, so we've actually had this conversation internally that eventually the ultimate goal for us would be to enrich people's experiences via blockchain powered assets. And so for me, that would be like, how many people have we actually helped in terms of, realizing that objective, right? So how many people, have enriched their lives or reimagined their lives um, using blockchain powered assets?
This is a very objective and measurable question, which I love a lot. Uh, my man, on my show, I have a tradition. At the end of each show, I'm asking my guests to imagine a station where you're stuck in an elevator and you have about 15 seconds. Think of it as a pitch deck to
Mm-hmm.
chat with a general audience, with general users who have no or little understanding of the whole Web3 space, of the blockchain, to chat with them and actually explain why Web3 is the future of all humankind. So what would be your 15-second pitch deck about why people should join Web3, why it's the future?
Uh, well, I think for me, it's simple. It's if you want to reimagine yourself, outside of whatever it is that you grew up in or the environment that you grew up in. And, Web3 actually gives you the chance to recreate that identity and to live according to how you want it to be, right? Reshape whatever future you might think, not limited by whatever currently exists or how you were born or how you were raised to begin with.
Wow, this is a very powerful way to end today's episode. Renz, I absolutely appreciate you coming to my podcast. I had an amazing time spending together with you, with your team back in Paris. I hope that we see each other in real life very soon. And you gave a lot of value, a lot of insights about the whole Web3 gaming industry. What you guys at BreederDAO, what you guys are doing at BreederDAO, is just amazing. You're truly reshaping, truly innovating the whole space, and it's a shame that not that many people actually know you in face. I do believe that you need to be at all top conferences, all top stages, just showcasing what you have already done, because the amount of work you have put there in the last year, and BreederDAO is that young. It's basically a year, 1 year old. The amount of work, the amount of partnerships you already got, it's just amazing. You're reshaping not only the Philippines ecosystem, not only the Asian, but the whole Web3 gaming ecosystem all around the world. So huge respect from my side, my friend. Absolutely enjoyed you having here today, and I hope to see you back at We in Web3 really soon.
For sure, and I appreciate all the kind words. Would love to, see you face to face as well. Hopefully soon. Um, and yeah, thank you so much for this conversation. I enjoyed it as much as you did, for sure.
Thank you very much, my man. Enjoy the rest of the day.